I wanted to take this video opportunity to talk about a comment or a couple of comments I've received recently about my transition from television news to independent media and now working for the government, shooting videos about our natural resources as a government employee.
We are in Clearwater tonight. I'm Allison Morrow.
Hi, I'm Allison Morrow.
I'm Allison Morrow.
And I've gone to a lot of places.
On St. Pete Beach, Allison Morrow.
And now with my former Force Recon Marine husband, I'm going off-grid-ish.
Welcome to the country, everybody. This is our new location, Airstream behind me. We have more stuff coming up on the Airstream specifically next week because we are going to be moving it yet again. Real fast though, what do you guys think about my purple overalls? Dig them? You better, because you're gonna be seeing them a lot. So here's the comment I got when people first started finding out that I was leaving mainstream media as a television news reporter who covered the environment and hitting the road to leave for the country, and I took a job to shoot videos for the government. And the comment I got was this: you are going to the dark side. Two people at one press event literally said to me, "So what's it like on the dark side?" Or "Heading to the dark side now," or "Now that you've gone to the
dark side,
your journey towards the dark side will be complete."
I just find this kind of silly and a little bit weird, so I wanted to address it because it is reflective of what I think is kind of a hubris in my old industry that I believe has to be addressed before it pulls itself out of its grave, which unfortunately it is digging for itself in a lot of ways. And my producer's on her way out, and she's not really much of a help. Now, I don't want to be too harsh because I still really believe in the profession of journalism, and I have a lot of friends who work really hard to try to dig up the truth for their local communities and make sure people are getting good information to make good choices in this wonderful country that we are lucky to live in, where we have a free press that is not ruled by the government. Unfortunately, our press is dealing with challenges that I really think would be better addressed head on and admitted to honestly than necessarily looking at another institution and calling them the dark side, as if mass media is somehow the light side, the perfect side, the side that has no problems, and that if I still worked there, I would somehow, I don't know, be the Luke Skywalker of truth. So I dug up some statistics and I looked at two recent polls, one by Gallup, the other by the Pew Research Center, looking at where Americans stand on trust of both mass media and the government. And I hate to tell you guys, but actually America sees both as pretty similar. And that is to say, they don't really trust either. Oh, there's my producer again. Hey, producer. Okay, she doesn't have much to add. And just like in TV news, I have a couple of blue cards here to help me with my notes, just like you would have on the anchor set. Back before they had iPads anyway. All right, so let's start with media first off. The Gallup article that I read came from September 26, 2019, so not too long ago, that said that on average, 13% of Americans trust the mass media a, quote, great deal, and 28% a fair amount. 41% total have a great deal or a fair amount of trust in newspapers, TV, and radio to report news, quote, fully, accurately, and fairly, 41%. Now, the record low, since they've been studying it for the last few decades, was in 2016 during the presidential election when trust dropped down to 32%. It has now rebounded to 41%. It was 53% in 97, and actually it was 40% in 2012, so certainly 41% is better than it has been in the past, but it's still not the majority of Americans here that are saying that when they watch mass media, they have this feeling that they're getting the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Now, some will blame this on President Trump because they say that he uses divisive rhetoric, he's negative about journalism, journalists. He calls the mass media the enemy of the people. And while I will say I don't often love his choice of words to describe journalists, I do not believe that this started with him. I think he's voicing a discontent that's been around for a while and perhaps adding fuel to that fire, but I don't think he started the fire himself. It's been around for a long time. I remember when I was in an honors poli-sci class in high school, my mom wrote in saying I would not just read the one newspaper that my professor said we needed to read every day so that we could come in informed, that I was also going to read the other newspaper in town because one had a reputation for being liberal and the other had a reputation for being more conservative, and she did not want me indoctrinated, so I would be reading both. And that was rather embarrassing, but it does just go to show that this kind of distrust, discontent has definitely been around a lot longer than this current presidential administration. And at this point, the reason why I even do this video is because I have a deep and great respect for the profession of journalism. And I think the only way that it gets saved from this growing distrust is for journalists to start being honest about the challenges that the institution is facing and to get real with audiences about it and start getting things right more often and start checking biases more often, but also just not pretending as if we on that side are the light side and they on that side are the dark side.
You underestimate the power of the dark side.
It just seems really hubristic and out of touch with what the public thinks about mainstream news. Okay, so what do people think about the government? Well, it turns out Pew Research Center did a survey earlier this year, back in April 2019, and found out that 17% of Americans trust the government in Washington, D.C. So 17% is a lot less than the 41% who trust mass media, but it's still not great, either one of them. It turns out that, like news, actually, the decline in trust of the government, the federal government mostly, has started in the 70s. Basically, they were attributing this to Watergate, to the Vietnam War, and then slowly declined into the 90s. There was a gain in trust after 9/11, but that has subsequently started to decrease again, and now we're at 17%. Turns out right now 21% of Republicans trust the government in D.C., 14% of Democrats, and that's a flip since Obama because, though this may not surprise you, trust in government does divide down party lines. If your person is in charge, you tend to trust the government more than if your person is not in charge or your adversary holds the highest seat in the executive branch of the United States. Now, you may think, well, this is a growing trend because younger people don't trust authority anymore. But it turns out, Pew says anyway, that 19% of millennials trust the government, and actually it's pretty similar to the average of all the Americans they surveyed at 17%. So they're saying that really younger people and older people alike do not trust the government in Washington, D.C. Now, keep in mind, this is specific to Washington, D.C., the federal government. This is not about local government, which I do think we should differentiate between both mass media on the national cable level and the network level, as opposed to our local news affiliates, and same with the federal government and maybe your city council. In both cases, you are more likely to interact with the folks in your local communities. They see things a lot closer to where the issues are occurring, and people tend to have more trust in those institutions because those people live among them and there's just more accountability. So people feel like they're less likely to get screwed by the folks that they see face to face at the grocery store versus the people who are way off in Washington, D.C. Okay, so why did I make this video? What does it have to do with an Airstream? Well, as somebody who has been in the news industry for almost 2 decades and was a reporter for 12, again, I have a very deep respect for what my peers are doing, and I really believe that if we're going to move forward as journalists, which journalists looks a lot different nowadays than it did 20 years ago. No longer do you have to work for, a brand recognition to call yourself a journalist. But if we're going to save journalism as a whole, I think we have to sit back and admit to our faults and take responsibility for them and be honest and transparent with the public and then start to move forward from that space instead of constantly defending ourselves and saying that we have no place to grow, no place to change, we never get it wrong, we're the best, we're awesome, we always tell the truth. I mean, I just feel like it's just so dishonest to say that somehow journalism, unlike every other mass institution, the institution of the press in America, is unaffected by the challenges that every other human institution is challenged by. That was kind of redundant. But anyway, I moved from the mass media to now shooting videos for the government, and people look at me from the inside of a newsroom and say, you went to the dark side. And again, that's how I started this video. That just goes to show me that people in the institution of the free press still don't understand the distrust that the average American has of the institution of the press right now. And to see yourself as the light side and somehow the government as the dark side, I think is really a reflection of not having a good pulse on where people are right now when it comes to authority and institutions in our country in general. And I make this video because I care a lot about the institution and I care a lot about the free press. It's really a gift that in our country we take for granted. We don't have to worry about having a YouTube channel where we speak out and challenge the power structures, or if you're on one of the major networks doing the same, you don't have to worry about a government coming in and chopping off your head and kidnapping your family like people do in other countries. And I think it's unfair that we let those people risk their lives while we sort of, I don't know, get lazy on our fat and security in this country and don't take seriously how to raise the bar on what the public expects of us. And I think the only way to start doing that is to start from a level of transparency and honesty about where we're at now with that distrust, and then try to do better in the future and move forward from that instead of being defensive and blinded to what people think about us right now. So again, I left mainstream media and started this whole path towards off-gridish living and minimalism with the opportunity that I saw to go direct with people like on this YouTube channel, talking about the issues that I used to cover with the environment, but doing it from more of a personal way so that you could see where I'm coming from and how I arrived at all this stuff. And so if I do, commentary on whatever issues might be out there, you may disagree or agree with me, but at least you'll see how I got there. And I think that's in large part where journalists need to get now too, is to be able to show people the process more often. So it's not like I'm handing you down the truth. You're coming along with me to see how we got there, and then hopefully that starts to build trust that we have lost. With the Airstream, we hope that our journey towards a more simple life will encourage people not only to start taking stock and be more intentional about their lives, about how we live on this earth, to be better stewards of the environment, but also just better members of our communities, have better relationships, slow down a little bit, pay attention, not just go through the motions of life, but really dig in and live life to its fullest. But I do that not just for me, but because I really, as somebody who still kind of considers herself a journalist, wants to give people information that may not be available right now to have lives that are more sustainable and hopefully more content, because I really believe that when we start getting down to the basics and reevaluating what really matters in life, that it not only is better for everybody from a resource perspective, but it's good for all of us mentally and physically and emotionally in our families and our communities. Again, I hope you liked this video. If you didn't, that's okay. But if you did, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time when we move this Airstream. Again, I'm Allison Morrow. See ya.